What are some of the big reasons that you believe that a lot of corporate security or physical security professionals aren't doing this already?
Oh, um, one of the reasons I think they're not doing it right now is just because, as we all know, technology evolves faster than humans, right?
Mhm.
We have all of these plans in place to harden technology, to adapt. We see a lot of that with AI right now. But at the end of the day, the dumbest computer in the room is the human. And so we are slower to adapt. A lot of people also think that the whole, if I had a nickel for every time I've heard, well, I'm not on social media, so I'm good online. I don't have an online footprint because I don't have social media. When in reality, you've got a credit card, you've got a cell phone. We have all of these things that interconnect us to the digital world, and you have a massive digital footprint. But most people attribute social media to your digital footprint or your online footprint. And I say this all the time. The last to adapt is the first to perish, and especially with physical security teams, the old adage of guards, gates, and guns worked for a long time. That was the gold standard. Where now we need to start incorporating the online portion, right, the digital portion, and I think that's kind of that's one of the reasons why who isn't doing it, while they're a little bit behind the curve. It used to be, hey, let's push this to get you to be proactive. Now we're entering into the space where if you don't have a digital or a virtual wing to your physical security program, you're almost behind the curve.
Yeah, it was interesting the point that you made about social media there. When I started at LifeRap and just being introduced to this whole world of digital threat intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember talking to like family and friends, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, well, I don't have Facebook, I don't have Instagram, I don't need to worry about that. And you would
Yeah,
just like go on the app and be like, well, here's all the stuff I can find with no OSINT skills, and
absolutely.
just like learning this business in like 2 weeks, let alone like what people really know that of what's going on, and it can be quite surprising for people who haven't been through that
Oh,
experience before.
absolutely. It's part of the, almost a pre-sales tool that we use today, where you can take $5, $30, whatever it may be, go to any of the data broker sites, find your social security number, your address, your home address, your, kind of get into it later, but those, where's your mother's maiden name, the street you grew up on, all of that's publicly available.
Mhm. What are some of the big threats that clients can expose themselves to? You've already touched on them a little bit, but what are some of the biggest threats that clients can expose themselves to if they're not taking this kind of the digital world as seriously as compared to like you mentioned, the guards, guns, and gates?
Right. Um, the biggest threat is, and I mean this politely, it's ignorance, right? If in the digital space, as a former targeter, I we want the target to be ignorant that they are being probed, right? The longer that they are kept in the dark, the more time and resource that I can put to you without you knowing. It's a dream come true for me, right? And so if you'll see, phishing, right, the phishing will skyrocket for someone who is either ill prepared or not prepared at all, or doesn't have a program in place. Um, Being social engineered, that's the big thing right now. Within the last couple of years, let's say 5 years, social engineering and phishing, those are really the name of the game when it comes to physical attacks, right? Um, for every physical attack in North America, let's say, or even in Europe, there is a very very good chance that it started with an online attack, right? And so unless you have those buttoned up online, you're just opening yourself up to an actual physical attack, and that's the last thing that we want.
Right. So the two big things that you're mentioning here, like phishing, social engineering. I can also just imagine and physical attacks, like you mentioned. If I can
Right.
find your address online or through some kind of online records, data brokers, anything like that, now more exposed to stalking, showing up at your
Yeah.
house, knocking on your door when I don't want that to necessarily happen.
Exactly. And physical security teams, the big thing, it's in the name, right, is they never want someone. They are there for when someone does knock on the door, right, when there is a threat actor on your doorstep. And in a sense, digital executive protection, the digital side of the house, almost, instead of getting rid of the threat when it shows up to the door. We just make sure that the threat actor never finds the door, right? What happens if they never can find the door, or make it harder for them to find the address, to show up? They're just going to move on to that next person that's not a hard target.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I remember talking to a security consultant one time about the the best way to protect yourself. Sometimes you're never going to be 100% defended
Right.
against everything, but his advice when it was like defending your home was just make your house look more dangerous or difficult to
Yeah.
break into than the next house.
Yeah.
Have a dog bowl, have a warning, beware dog sign. Just like it's like okay, that's just a little harder. I'll go to the one where I know there's not a dog. So it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing that you're talking about. If I got to invest that extra 5 hours to target this particular person,
Yeah.
maybe I go to the next person rather than
Yeah, exactly. There's a threshold. Everyone has a threshold. When it comes to targeting, it is time and resource. And so when we know that, if I'm going to sit here and I have, like you said, 5 hours to dedicate to this one person, if I see that they do have certain plans implemented, they're being probed, they're a very hard target, they're making good digital decisions. Well, then I'm not going to keep spinning my wheels trying to get in. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to that next family. And just like you said, no one's 100% protected. It's the exact same thing online. It's 2023. If someone really wants to come after you, they're going to. But all we have to do is make sure you are just below that threshold to where them spending the time and resource outweighs the reward of them actually exploiting you, and they're just going to move on to that next person. And so that's kind of what we say. What I preach is becoming a hard target below that threshold.